So welcome everybody, and thank you to our community and learning sponsor, AGL Astral Global Logistics Limited, who are very kindly sponsoring the Hopscotch Learning Community Programme, which is fantastic. Obviously, we saw quite a lot of you at the last inspiration event, which we had at the hospice. And I'm pleased to say that we've had a few more people that have come in, and we're up to 70 schools and groups that are taking part in this year's Hopscotch Learning Community Programme, which is absolutely fantastic. And you can see here all the schools and groups that are taking part. Okay, so we're going to get started today with Annie Laughrin from Wild in Art, who is going to take you through designing, creating and painting your sculpture. Annie.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. So my name's Annie Laughrin and I work for Wild in Art. I've been working with Wild in Art for the last 10 years, and the majority of my role is around delivering all of our art and learning programs. So we work in partnership with lots of different charities on these trail events. And my role is to kind of support all of our event partners, learning program managers and art program managers, just to kind of get the most out of the experience, make sure that all of our schools have a really exciting journey and that they make the most of their involvement in this project. So I'm just gonna, like with during COVID, I'm just gonna say next slide, if that's possible, if we can go through to the next one. So as I mentioned, so global reach. I'm just gonna have a quick look down the list, and I'm sorry if I have to name and shame anybody, but it feels like I can hear feedback, but I'm not sure. Yeah, Pat, sorry, Pat Clark, maybe if you could just mute your speaker, or if Claire or Celia could do that, that would be great. Sorry about that. So yeah, we're global leaders in the delivery of art trails, and our art trails have multiple. Sorry, is there? Yeah, is that? I think that might be better. Thank you so much. I can't see my slides now. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know why. There we go. I think it might be the view that I have selected, so I'm just going to go with that one. So sorry, I'm back on track. So yeah, so we're global leaders in the delivery of public art trails, and our events, we work in partnership with charities, and the idea is that we create placemaking events that encourage wide communities to come and explore their town and city, hopefully visiting lots of the sculptures along the way, but accessing lots of different businesses and organizations. They're a really lovely example of community, of kind of working on projects that bring together lots of different parts of our community. Sorry, Celia, is there any chance that you can just go down the list and kind of mute anybody? Sorry, I'm the easiest person at getting distracted, and I'm getting loads of feedback, which is really hard to kind of concentrate. Sorry. So yes, what I'm going to be talking to you about today is the opportunities that this project will afford you to try and make sure that you can get the most out of it, get the most out of the resources that the team at Hop2It have pulled together for you, but also the resources that Wild in Art have created for you. Yeah, if we can move on to the next slide. So we believe really passionately in the importance of creativity in the classroom. So all of our events, we design them purposely to include a learning programme which will hopefully give as many young people within your area the opportunity to engage with not only the project, but also to experiment and explore different creative mediums. We know that children are the kind of lifeblood and the heartbeat of all of our communities. So by engaging with schools and groups and organisations who work with young people, or we hope to be able to kind of start encouraging young people to engage with this project kind of months and months before those sculptures hit the streets. And the idea is that we want as many people as possible to engage in this project, to go out and explore the trail, hopefully enjoy the trail and donate to the charity, but kind of just broaden it out and engage as many people as possible in this journey, so that when those sculptures do land, as our previous sculpture trails have with the pigs previously and the Elmers, that as many people as possible, the whole community, can engage in some way, shape or form. We want our learning programs to include as many of your young people as possible, because we hope that that the support that the charity has it within.
Annie, can you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry, I didn't do that. I don't know what's going on. Apologies. So yeah, we want our young people who are involved in this project to have as much opportunity to be involved as possible. And you will know your schools and your groups and your organisations far better than we can. But in order to engage as many young people as possible, there are lots of ways that you can get the most out of this project. And try and encourage as many young people as possible to get involved. So things like name your sculpture competitions or design your sculpture kind of competitions are a great way of targeting the whole organisation rather than just smaller groups of fun. Obviously, we know practically it might not be possible for hundreds of children to be involved in the actual creation of your sculpture, but anything that you can do to try and encourage as many people to be involved in that process. It might be through these, your design sheets. You might have a whole school submit designs, and it might be that you use your school council or a group of young people to distill down and kind of pull together lots of different themes, and then maybe use their powers of negotiation to come up with a master design that has different elements from lots of different people's designs. It might be that you have a creative week. It might be that hairs become part of a kind of wider planned kind of year group discussion. You might be able to use the kind of themes and the kind of thematic resources that have been provided to be able to kind of widen out. You might want to make it part of kind of maths or science or other workshops. There's so many entry points for this project, and we know that there's no one size fits all, and we also don't want you to feel that that we're teaching you to suck eggs. So we've tried not to pull together kind of really rigid lesson plans and things like that. Rather, we would rather give you starting points, ideas, and themes, so that you can run with it and make it adaptable to the young people that you work with at whatever key stage, whatever age group. It is a lot of the resources that we provide. They do kind of seem more focused towards primary rather than secondary, but we know that they are completely adaptable, whether you are working from nursery and early years all the way through to kind of college and university. And we would encourage you to kind of maybe develop briefs or develop activities and activations that work for the age group and the users within your groups. So if we can move on to the next slide. So we have tried to gather everything together in one place. So rather than printing off lots of different worksheets and fact sheets, some of which you might never need or decide to work with, everything has been gathered in what we call an online learning toolkit. And this is a kind of evolving space that's online. So it's not just a static go to it, download everything and never go back. It's hopefully something that is a bit more user friendly and adaptable, that you can just tap into and hopefully identify which areas of the project, where you are in the programme, and download the resources that are useful. So if you're looking for worksheets or quick classroom activities, it might be that you're looking for kind of example posts for social media or assets, logos, things like that. You want to create your own posters. It might be that you're looking for fundraising activities or sponsor sheets or things like that. There's all sorts of different resources that have been pulled together in this one spot. So all you need to do is follow the link, and I'm sure the team have either shared this or will be sharing it with you after this, and this presentation will be available, so it's got the link embedded. And it just kind of shows you what the timelines are, and it's kind of a one-stop shop for all of those links and resources. So do feel free to have a look through that. And kind of download everything you need, and there will be contact details for the team who you know, will be able to kind of respond to anything as well. But rather than kind of, because of the environmental impact of printing lots of resources and materials, we wanted to make it a little bit more kind of adaptable, so you can find what you need and just download what you want. So moving on from that one. And again, sorry. So this will provide you and provided hard copies of. So over the course of the last kind of 8 years since I've been delivering these learning programs, we've tried to distill as much of the practical how to work with your sculpture information as possible. The materials to use, and more importantly, the materials to avoid. So all of that information has been pulled into this learning program information pack. So it is more the practical, as I said, guide to working with the sculpture. So you will have a physical copy of this, but you will also be able to download it from that online portal. And it does detail how to introduce the sculpture, so hopefully give you some ideas whether you want to do an unveiling in assembly, whether you want to get other school team members involved, whether you want to, you've got a great librarian or maybe somebody in the school canteen. You might have the sculpture popping up in lots of different places before it is painted. So there's lots of kind of fun ideas and ways to kind of introduce the sculpture, and also ways to engage your local community. It might be that you decide to have a tea party, or you might have a local celebrity who might come in and unveil the sculpture. We've had firemen, policemen. It depending on what you have coming up, you can link this back to anything else that you're doing. So it also has lots of ideas around that. Ways of working with the media, you know, there's lots of examples of how to put together press releases. These are really lovely visual projects. So it's a really nice way to talk about you and what you're doing and why your young people are engaging with a project like this that is supporting a charity. So there's lots of really important information and information on how to evaluate your involvement in the project. But I think the most important kind of parts of this pack are the handy hints on how to decorate your sculpture, as I said, what materials to use and what to avoid. And then if we can move on to the next slide. We've also put together a short video for you. So we've got a 6-minute video that's been created by one of our tame artists that we work with regularly. Jenny has produced probably about 80 or 90 sculptures for Wild in Art over the last 18 years, raising probably well over £250,000 for our charity partners. So she just talks you through the basics of, literally from unwrapping the sculpture to mapping out what your design is, the type of materials that she uses, how easy it is to add little decoupage or decoupage elements, how to varnish the sculpture. So it's all there in a really quick 6-minute video. And it is something that we're going to look to update. We created this about 6 or 7 years ago, so we will be updating it. But if you want something that you can use or share with other members of your team within the school, other senior leaders or other kind of adults who will be supporting on the project, but it's also suitable for any of the young people. So if you want to introduce them to what they're going to be doing or share to wider groups what other members of your school, young people are doing, then it's a great handy resource. And if you only look at the pink pack in how to create your sculpture once, then the one page I would suggest looking at is section 3, which is kind of literally just a very handy do's and don'ts page, which just shows you which materials we recommend and which ones we will avoid. But I'll talk you through those really, really quickly, and apologies for anybody who has attended one of these sessions previously for pigs or elephants. You've already heard all of these things. There's lots of resources in the pack too that link to the actual sculpture. So we call them sculpture-specific resources. So the Suffolk Wildlife Trust have pulled together some really lovely fact files and classroom activities and all sorts of other bits and pieces that you can have a look back, looking at the different breeds of hares and where they can be found and how they're impacted by how they have had their environments affected through different environmental impacts. So do have a look through that, and if you there's lots of resources there for you to explore and kind of, as I said, thematic starting points. So looking at the actual art materials, there are 3 main products that we recommend, not only to our schools and learning programme, but also to our art programme. And that's mainly so that we can manage kind of unwanted reactions to varnish layers, and make sure that sculptures are as robust as they possibly can be. We know through we've delivered probably 200 plus trails. We know how well loved the sculptures are, how much interaction they that they face over the course of the summer months from visitors, whether that's the large sculptures that are out on the streets or the learning programme sculptures, which will be displayed internally in different venues, libraries, museums, shopping centres, places like that. We know that people love to get up close and personal. They love having selfies with them. So a lot of the advice that we give is just to make sure that you're picking materials that are easy for you to access, but also that will have a really robust kind of finish, so that when you get your sculpture back at the end of the trail, hopefully it will be looking in the same tip-top condition that you sent it back as. So the 3 main paints that we recommend are spray paints, which might make some of you feel a little bit dubious. Kind of, I know, depending on the age group of the young people, that may or may not be an option. If you are using spray paints, then obviously please do make sure that you are following any advice around PPE, using face masks and things like that. The kind of products do tend to travel quite a lot, so if you are using them inside, then do think about your surrounding, what is in the environment, and particularly if you've got lots of computers or tech and things like that, because the particles on these spray paints do travel quite a long way, and you want to make sure that young people are adequately protected with their PPE. What a lot of our schools and community groups will use is acrylic paints, and that may be because you have a supply or stock of them already. What I would recommend is going with artist grade acrylic paints rather than the ones that you might pick up in places like B&M Bargains or Home Bargains, just because of the quality of finish. What tends to happen is that these are a lot thicker and lumpier, and when you're building up layers of paint, particularly with primary colours, I find that you can end up having to do multiple coats just to get a clear flat finish. So I would use things like System 3, Americana, Liquitex. They're all good brands, but avoid kind of anything that's really kind of cheap and nasty looking. Sometimes even things from like the works can just mean that you have to use, so they can be quite opaque when you're painting, and you have to build up so many different layers. One of the cheapest and most effective kind of resources, if you are on a budget, in terms of getting a good range of colors, is just your kind of normal household Dulux color matte emulsions, or Crown or Valspar. These kind of tester pots, particularly the Dulux color matte emulsion, you can get a 250 ml pot of Dulux for about £3 or £4, that can be mixed to any color you can think of. They literally have those color matching stations in Homebase and B&Q, or paint centers, that you can kind of get all of your colors mixed, and for a reasonable amount of money, £4, this kind of size tin would actually probably do a full coat all over one of your medium hair sculptures. So it can be a nice way of getting good coverage. And you can also you can use these kind of with acrylic paints as well. So it might be that you choose to get your base coats done with a kind of cheaper emulsion, and then use a mixture of emulsion and an acrylic for doing your detail. What I get asked all of the time is around doing kind of outlines. A lot of the designs that young people kind of come up with will have bold kind of backgrounds, but there's quite often quite a lot of detail all over the sculptures. So if you are looking for something, what I implore you to not do is use something like a solvent-based marker pen to outline your details. With the most amount of problems that we have are where things like Sharpies or edding markers slip into kind of production, or you'll have all of the correct materials being used throughout the creation of these sculptures, and they look amazing, and then somebody's like, oh, we just want to outline and do the kind of fine details, and they grab a Sharpie and they draw it on, and that looks great, and then you go to put your varnish layer on, and because Sharpies are solvent-based markers, they do quite often disagree with the kind of varnish, which often does tend to be epoxy resin based or solvent based, and the two clash, and they can create lots of streaks and runs. So do avoid anything like those. Make sure that that your young people are aware of that. And other things not to use, the kind of smelly old poster paints that that classrooms, particularly primary classrooms, tend to have. They're just not that fit for purpose, and they will just run off or wash off if those are used. Things like watercolors, avoid those as well. They're not robust enough. And oil paints and gouache, they will work, but they do tend to have much longer drying times. Just the very nature of oil paints and gouache is that that they have that kind of longer period for drying, and they can appear to be touch dry, but aren't, and then they can have some movement. And quite often we find that gouache and oil paints come in very similar looking tubes to these acrylics. So just make sure that anything that you are using, if you've got a whole load of materials within your school or your group or your club, then just make sure that that the ones that the young people have access to are the right ones and fit for purpose. As well, just avoid things like felt tips. As I said, whiteboard markers, any other solvent-based markers, and anything that doesn't kind of hit that spray, emulsion, or acrylic kind of theme. There's some links within this presentation. Obviously, this presentation will get circulated afterwards. If you're trying to find suppliers There are loads of them online, places like Cass Arts, Fred Elders, Jackson Art Supplies, Hobbycraft, Art Discount. There's links to all of those within this, and they do some great special offers, but it may be that you have an Expo or other ordering kind of facility within your school environment. But you're more than welcome. If you have any questions and the local team don't have answers for it, then they can obviously refer those back to me. As I mentioned, this is kind of what can happen if there are reactive kind of markers used. Whilst we have, I've just kind of advocated for acrylic-based markers, which are great for doing those kind of details, and particularly for young people with slightly less developed motor skills, they can be a great kind of tool within your arsenal for doing kind of detail. If you decide to go down the route of Posca, which is one of the industry leading kind of providers of acrylic-based markers, there are two that we know of that that are a little bit volatile when it comes to the varnishing layer. So if you are using Posca pens, or you've got some Posca pens, just avoid using the blue and the slate grey one. We don't know of any other problems. I think it is just whatever the added ingredient, it just doesn't mix well with varnish layers. But a lot of our artists are actually moving across to these, which are a Molotow as a brand, but there's lots of different acrylic based markers on the market, so just have a little look, and if you want any additional advice, then do ask. If it turns out you're kind of halfway through, or you've already started and you realize that a rogue marker or a rogue Sharpie or something has infiltrated the design process or the production process, then it's not the end of the world, but you might just need to create a barrier by using a kind of fixing spray. So there are lots of different ones on the market. We recommend either this kind of Liquitex one. There's a Winsor Newton one that is in that in the picture there. There's lots of different things, but it's just a way of being able to fix on a design and create a bit of an invisible barrier between that and the varnish layer to try and stop the two having a reaction together. It hopefully is, none of this will be something that you'll have to worry about, but if you do notice, or you have already kind of started and you think, oh God, I think I might have used something that might be volatile, then there is a workaround. So, if you want any support or advice, then do just ask. If we can go on to the next slide. Lots of our young people, when they're coming up with their designs, a lot of them do have things like pearlescent paint, glow-in-the-dark paint, metallic paints, and they are absolutely fine to use, but just make sure that you are using acrylic metallics and things like that. There are some really, really brilliant products on the market. A lot of our artists swear by a supplier called Robertson's, who do a product called Liquid Metal. You name the color, they have the most incredibly vibrant, bright kind of paints available, acrylic paints. There are some great marker pens that are kind of silvers, golds, chromes, things like that. There's this particular supplier of spray paint do an amazing Cobra. They do an amazing range of chrome paints or gold paints and silver paints. So again, there's links in this presentation to all of those. But if you are struggling or you are worried about materials, then do just ask. We can move on to the next one. I've just added a quick slide in here about additions and modifications. So for our main trail, for our artist trail with the large sculptures, we ask all of our artists to minimize any additions or modifications, mainly due to kind of health and safety. Obviously, we need to be very, very careful because of the number of people who will be visiting our trail, and we want to make sure that everybody is kept as safe and secure as they possibly can be. So we're always very kind of wary of there being anything 3D stuck onto a sculpture that could poking somebody's eye, or could be sharp, or could allow young people, you know, who might run up to it, who might be unaware of how that might hurt them. And what we also find, and it's very rare that our sculpture trails come under attack from malicious kind of damage, but what we do find is that damage can sometimes occur just from overlove, and that might be just from all of the number of people kind of, you know, putting their arms around them, having selfies, but people aren't always aware of the clothing that they might be wearing. We get a lot of parents who, even though we have signs all over sculptures saying please do not climb, who do put small children on top of sculptures, on heads, on backs, on bodies. People's shoes and buckles and all sorts of things can scratch and damage sculptures. So anything that isn't just a paint layer does come into an awful lot of kind of interaction. So we do try and keep those to a limit. That being said, our schools programme is the opportunity where we can be a little bit more playful, and we can encourage people to use other materials, because they are going to be displayed internally, and we don't need to worry about weathering and things like that, and they will be kind of monitored by the organisations with which they're being displayed. So you do have a little bit more flexibility. What I would say is that if you're planning to have any 3D element that requires power, then please do let the team know, because that will obviously have a big impact on where that sculpture is displayed. If it requires kind of power or batteries or kind of any additional kind of measures, then it doesn't mean to say that isn't possible, but that just needs a bit of forward planning. We've had all sorts of materials, from sweeties to pennies, mosaic tiles, wool, fabric, flotsam and jetsam, bottle caps, all sorts of bits and pieces. But as I've mentioned, they are going to face an awful lot of interaction, and any of you who have school book corners or displays where there is any bits that kind of are like picky edges or bits that could be touched and a tactile, people will touch them and pick them, and little fingers love kind of pulling at things. So if you do plan to have those 3D additional elements, it's absolutely not a problem. Just let the team know what you're planning, what materials you're planning to use. If you need any additional support, then do ask. But do be aware, after the 2 months or 2.5 months that they're on display, when they come back, they may need a little bit of TLC. I know when I was delivering the projects, we had very, very little, as I said, malicious damage, and we did try and keep on top of that. So if anything was picked up or anything did have any damage, we did try and include that in our maintenance program. But it might be that you might need to plan in for a little bit of a refurb when they come in. We don't want any of your young people to feel disappointed. I know we had a sculpture once that was covered in gummy bears and gobstoppers and jelly beans and things like that, and when they did come back, all I kept thinking was how many poorly tummies there must have been from people if kids were eating these sweets that had been covered in varnish layers and things like that. So just kind of be aware of that, and kind of try wherever possible to minimize those things. But if you have a great idea, as you can see, some of these the ones in this picture, they do look absolutely incredible, and they are kind of standout members of our displays, and we want you to be as creative. We want your young people to feel that they have the opportunity to be as creative as they want to be, but yeah, just kind of with a bit of a warning. The sculpture, when you arrive, it is so our sculptures are made of fiberglass, and they are coated in a gel coat layer, and then they're primed. So at the point when you arrive it and you unwrap it, they are ready for you to work on straight away. That being said, if you do decide to move it around the school, if you have it in your forest school area, if it gets rained on, if it ends up with grubby fingers all over it, because lots of different people have been handling it and moving it around. I do always suggest that when you go to get started, that you just give it a good clean down before you do start painting, just to make sure that any kind of hand oils, any bits of grub or dirt or bits of yuck are cleared away before you start working on your paint area. And what I also, as a recommendation, I always suggest, rather than using graphite pencil, your normal HB or whatever pencils to map out any of your design, I would use light colouring pencils, maybe a yellow or a light blue or something like that, just because they don't tend to kind of shed so much dust. And what I have seen happen in the past is people use quite heavy carbon pencils, and then when they start kind of painting with lighter coloured paints, it gets all mixed up in the paint and can look a bit grubby, or those pencil marks show through, and that just for me looks a little bit messy. So things like a lighter coloured colouring pencil, like I said, a yellow or a blue, you can wipe it off with a wet cloth rather than worry about it smudging. And the other top tip is avoid using rubbers. That's the other thing about using carbon pencils. You give a child a pencil, the first thing they want is a rubber because they're worried about making mistakes. If you use a rubber to rub off parts of the design, then you're basically putting a layer of kind of rubber or eraser or whatever the material that the rubber is made of onto the sculpture, which is invisible, but it might act as a barrier to your paint adhering. The other thing is if you have scuffs or dirty marks or things on your primer level and you just kind of want to tidy it up, then just use a wee bit of fine grade sandpaper and just buff out any of those kind of dirty marks, and they do just normally disappear. So either clean it down with some sugar soap or a mild detergent, or just use a bit of a bit of sandpaper to kind of buff it up. The other thing when you are unwrapping it is we would like you to keep as much of your packing and wrapping materials as possible. As Celia has mentioned, we're going to have nearly 70 sculptures, smaller sculptures that come in on the trail. And the one thing that we don't want to happen is for them to be wrongly labelled or wrongly marked. We know that your young people are going to be super proud of the sculptures that they have produced, and they're going to want them to be displayed proudly with the right name. So if you can help us in making sure that your sculpture is clearly marked, so maybe when you unwrap it, lift it up and write the school's name on the very underside of that sculpture. And then when you are finished and you come to wrap it up, it might be that you've been provided with a "please look after this bear" style label, like the ones that you can see here for previous projects, or it might be that you just print a label and stick it on the outside. But having those kind of doubling up just means that we're making sure that there can't be any mistakes, and that your sculpture will be displayed for everybody to be proud of. And there will be, it's not in this version of the presentation, but there is a link to a form that will be shared with you to gather the information that the team will need for all of the event collateral. So, you know, your school or your group will be included in the trail map and the website, in the app, and we want to make sure that we are we're kind of advertising, or we're kind of printing the name of your organization in the way that you want it to be identified. So if when the team sends you across that link, if you can let them have that information as soon as possible, because the sooner we have that information back, the sooner that can filter across to the marketing team in the production of all the event collateral, and all of the sculptures when they're in their final venues, host venues will have some kind of signage that shows that it is your sculpture. So we need the name of the sculpture, a brief kind of 50 to 100 word description about how your young people have come up with their design. What impact are they hoping that their sculpture will make? you know, where have their ideas come from, why are you involved in the project, anything you like. But you will be sent that form, so if you can let the team have that back as soon as possible, that would be great. And we won't inundate you with hundreds and hundreds of emails, but the team will keep you updated with the progress of the wider project, what's happening, what time, what milestones are coming up. There's loads of fun activations. We've got lots of sponsors who are sponsoring the project. So it might be that they have different activations. There might be kind of different fun days or different fundraising challenges or different themes that come up during the course of the project. So I would imagine maybe once a month, or it might be a little bit more or less frequently than that, but make sure that we have as many points of contact as possible for you. We know that within particularly school environments that there can be kind of changes in personnel, people might have to go off sick, and we want to make sure as many people are aware of all the different things that they can get involved with, but any milestones or objectives that are coming up. So if you've got somebody super efficient within your school office or your organisation office, it might be that somebody in your senior leadership team wants to keep abreast of what's happening and how they might be able to get involved. And it's a lovely way for us to be able to share good news stories and how some of your colleagues or some of the schools and organisations are working with the sculpture. So as well as us kind of transmitting information to you through those newsletters, if you've got something exciting coming up, if you have put on a fundraising event that you think, oh, you know, we're absolutely ahead of the game here, and we've managed to raise this amazing amount of money, or we've got this great idea, then do share all of those ideas and activations back with the team, because that's the gold really for our marketing teams, both at Wild in Art but also at Hop to It, to be able to take that collateral and take that content and be able to share that through all of our social media channels. So if you've got some lovely pictures from World Book Day when it comes up, or I don't know, there might be a Mad Hatter's tea party that you decide to have, or you might have a head teacher being bombarded with wet sponges in the playground while they're dressed up with bunny ears, whatever it is that you're doing, if you have great news stories or content that you can share back with us, it might be that you are the lead feature in the next newsletter, just telling everybody what you're doing. And if you are using you know, a fundraising totalizer, or if you've got something visual within your school to show how you're meeting your fundraising targets, then any photos at all that you have, then do please share those back with us. Or if you're posting on your social media channels, do link in with the hashtags. And as I mentioned, there's not enough good news stories about schools and education establishments. So please do promote your involvement in the project. And that can be as little as using, you know, using or creating a banner or a footer for your email to say that you're involved in the project. It might be putting out social media posts. It might be adding a section to your school newsletter or your school website. It might be that your little character like this has its own identity. It might shout about the project. You might be able to use different apps, or there used to be an app called Chatterpix that you could vocalize an inanimate object. So I've had sculptures in the past that have had their own personalities, that have kind of talked through social media, whether it's through X or whether it's through Instagram, where they're kind of chatting and saying what the progress is. Or some of your young people might script some voice pieces. It might be that your young people can kind of practice their literacy skills by writing articles for your own newsletter from the perspective of your sculpture. So there's so many ways that that we know that you can promote what you're doing by giving your sculpture its own presence, and having your own kind of fun with the project. I think with these kind of projects, it is one of those cases of you get out what you put in, and you can have so much fun exploring kind of lots of different practical creative mediums, but also lots of ways of having fun and hopping to it. If we can move on to the last one, we're nearly there. So as I said, the trail mapping, it might well be one of the largest projects that your school has been involved with, and it really hopefully will inspire young people and their families to hopefully get out from behind their electronic devices and go and explore the local area. But it doesn't have to be whilst it's just being worked, the sculpture's being worked on. We really hope that this will encourage young people to get out and go and visit their sculpture during the trail. And we see the school's sculptures as being kind of gateways of entry points into this wider project. So they may go to their local shopping centre to visit their child's sculpture, but then that will be a kind of gateway into doing the wider project. So you can help and encourage that through maybe setting some challenges for your young people during the summer holidays. It might be selfie challenges, or it might be competitions, photo competitions. It might be that you want them to create their own stop frame animations or their own short films. It might be that you set a reading challenge, so you look at books that are themed around hares, or that hares and Watership Down, or rabbits, or all sorts of things. You might set your young people the challenge of reading books, or going to lectures, or doing other kind of activities that they can do over the summer. But again, share those back, blog those back, and kind of let us know how you have been engaged. And it might be that some of those host venues will have other activities. It might be film screenings, it might be fun creative workshops. So hopefully there will be a whole lot of things happening, and as I said, this is your kind of gateway and your starting point into this project, but there will be a whole host of other things that hopefully you and your young people can get involved with. And most importantly, remember, this is a real world project. I know so many young people take part in really exciting projects and challenges within the school environment, but they sometimes they only stay within the walls of that institution. Whereas, as I said, this is a great opportunity for your young people to be in something, involved in something which has a really tangible platform, and they're going to have their work kind of platformed alongside artists, celebrities, that can be seen by potentially hundreds of thousands of people during the course of the trail. We have a whole raft of trail super fans that travel all over the country. So not only is it going to be seen by their mums and dads and brothers and sisters and grandparents, it will be seen by literally thousands of people. It's something to be really, really super proud of. And so we want to make sure that your young people get as much out of this project as possible, and can engage with it in as many ways as possible. So hopefully this presentation has given you a few starting points, but we don't know everything. We're always really, really excited when people come to us with new ideas or new suggestions or new ways of working on this project, new communities to engage with. We want to make sure that there is as much diversity in our programs as possible, and as many young people have those opportunities to be as creative as they can be. So yeah, thank you very much. Hopefully that's answered a few questions, and if not, then I'm always happy for those to be redirected through the team in terms of kind of resources or materials or anything at all to do with the project. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Annie. I know there's a couple of questions, but I just want to cut through these couple of remaining slides. So obviously, fantastic that you're going to get started creating your leveret, and we can't wait to see it. The deadline for you is the 21st of March to get that completed. We will be having a drop-off day on the 24th of March at the hospice and at the warehouse. There'll be various times during the day we'll ask you to come and drop off your leverets to us, and that information will be sent. But at least you've got that information. You know, you put that in the diary to know that that's when you're working towards. So that's great. Annie also mentioned about the data form, and that is on the toolkit now. And the deadline for you to complete that is Friday the 7th of March. As Annie's also pointed out, the areas of what the information is that we need, but it's right at the bottom of the page. Have a look. If you've got any issues, then get in contact with us and let us know. So I'm going to, last one I think is, obviously, I'm Celia, you've met Annie. So obviously, and we've got the team here, so anything that we can do, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. And let's open it up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And then we'll open it up to questions, because I know that there's a couple of people that did have questions on the floor. If you unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then ask your question, that would be great.
Hello, can you hear
Okay.
us? Can you hear
Jackie,
us?
is that?
Yeah, that
Yep.
is. So you've been presenting to our team of young people, because we co-produce everything here at First Youth. So you've answered some of our questions. Is there a recommended varnish for varnishing our hair?
Absolutely. So I will share the links for these back with the team. So for our main trail, we use a product called Urban Hygiene, Easy On. It is quite an expensive product. It does work out for this kind of size set about £50. It's epoxy resin based product. And it does need to be used by kind of responsible adults. It is a chemical based epoxy product. But the reason that we use it for our main trails is because of its excellent kind of qualities. It's kind of it's very robust. It has anti-graffiti properties, so it stops anybody from kind of drawing or painting on the sculpture, and it makes it very easy for us to kind of clean and minimize damage. One of these sets would actually probably varnish 2 or 3 of the size of your smaller size hairs. So if cost was prohibitive, but you can work with a couple of other schools, then it might be that you could do that together. The problem with it is that it has only a shelf life of about 24 hours once the 2 parts are mixed. So though all 3 sculptures would need to be completed, 2 or 3 sculptures need to be completed at the same time. But I have got another couple of slightly more cost effective varnishes that we have used in the past. I think somebody within the chat has mentioned that you don't have to varnish it. We absolutely actively encourage you to do that to make sure that it is as robust as possible and that things don't get scratched or damaged. But your sculptures will be displayed in internal venues, so weathering isn't such an issue. But we do, particularly if you plan to have it outside or move it around kind of school in the future, I think whatever you can do to protect your sculpture is kind of best practice. But what I will do after this session is I will just drop an email to Celia with 2 or 3 other recommended varnishes that you might want to look into, and they're all available to purchase kind of online from Amazon or Homebase and places like that. But ideally something like a non-yellowing yacht varnish, but again, do make sure with anything to do with varnishing and painting, if you are using any materials which carry warnings, as most of the cleaning products under most of our kitchen sinks do make sure that your team are using the proper PPE, whether it's face masks, gloves, kind of other things that you need to be kind of aware of, or glasses to cover eyes, just to make sure that you are being as safe as you can be.
Thank you. As I said, you have been presenting to young people. We have a slight technical hitch with our returning because our bubble wrap got used for a competition, but we'll sort that. They were quite amused to think that they'd used all their bubble wrap in a competition. So thank you for the use of that, but we will return it in some bubble.
bob something, or I mean, do you know what my top tip for kind of returning it is, if you have a local charity shop that has like an old sleeping bag, or an old duvet or something like that, so that you can wrap it and it is as protected as possible. I would say for your little hairs, I can imagine that they would fit perfectly in an old sleeping bag and know that they're going to be really, really well snuggled and looked after. I'm just having a look at here in terms of, there was a question about decoupage. That, yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of schools and groups that decide to use that. I would, if you are using, you want something that's colour fast. So drawing onto white kind of standard photo paper with felt tips or colouring pens, as soon as you start to dip that in, whether it's kind of wallpaper paste or PVA glue or anything like that, you're probably going to find that it isn't water safe. So there's a great product that you can find online or in Hobbycraft called Deco Patch, which is really bright, thin, kind of almost like the consistency of like tracing paper, but slightly thinner, or kind of crepey paper, which is really, really bright and vibrant colours. And you get them in all sorts of different patterns, from animal prints to cupcakes to dots to stripes to you name it. And those sheets of paper can be great if you want to rip them up, or kind of do like an interesting deco patch kind of design. There's also a product you used to be able to get called Lasertran, and there is a similar version, but it's called something else, which is like a decal paper. So any of you who have used those kind of transfer tattoos, temporary tattoos, it's the same kind of principle. So you can print onto it using an inkjet or laser printer. There's different variations of the product. So if you had photos or images or designs that your young people had done that you wanted to transfer onto the sculpture, it can be used in that way. So you print it off, you dip it into water, and then you transfer it onto the sculpture. So I did this, I've done this a bit recently with a lighthouse project that I was doing, where we had lots of different young people's faces all over in the different portholes. So yeah, if that's something that you're interested in doing, then I can certainly share best practice in terms of those materials.
Thanks for that. The idea was that every child would colour in something that would then be stuck on.
Yeah.
And there's about 100 kids.
Yeah.
So the idea, we were hoping that they could colour it in using the Posca pens or something like that. But it was what paper's best to use that we can then PVA onto the sculpture.
What I would suggest is always, and this is my suggestion in life and in everything, is just run a couple of tests with the materials that you've got, and kind of whether it's on a box lid or something else. If needed, I'm more than happy. I've got a couple of these to hand, which are a little kind of sample pieces of primed fiberglass. So if necessary, I can send a couple of these out if you wanted to trial using something a bit different. But to be honest, just using kind of a solid surface, whether it's a box lid or something like that, test out on different materials, and then kind of go over it just to make sure that it doesn't kind of bleed. And that way you could save yourself a whole load of trauma from working on the entire sculpture, only to find out that the materials you use don't kind of work. So kind of run a few tests beforehand. But yeah, you can draw onto paper with Posca pens, but to be honest, you're almost better drawing directly onto the sculpture with that, unless you are using a kind of transfer paper. What I have seen people do in the past is get their young people to do their design, draw their design using just kind of standard felt tip pens, and and normal white paper, and then they've scanned those in and printed them off on a laserjet printer, because the laserjet seems to be less reactive to kind of wet materials and bleeding and things like that. But again, it's definitely worth having an experiment and see what materials and what resources you have that you can use.
Brilliant, thanks. That's helpful, because we've got so many kids and they're not in one venue.
Yeah.
It was the easiest way was to have everybody involved, would be that they all do a little bit, that we then make it look like a patchwork.
Absolutely.
Like it's been sewn together.
Yeah, I've had people who've done that with kind of leaves, or sometimes it's been words, or it's been heart, or it's been, you know, and everybody gets to do their own tiny piece, and then it gets broad, you know, kind of all patched together, as you've mentioned.
Brilliant, thank you.
No worries.
Thanks. Any other questions for Annie?
Yeah, we just have one last. The young people have asked, will we be told where their hair will be placed?
Yes. Well, yeah. It'll be further on down the line, but it won't be imminently. We're obviously, Claire, who's on the call today, and myself will be putting together the routes and the placement of all the little leverets. So obviously, once we've confirmed all that, once we're getting near to confirming, we'll let you all know. But it won't be imminently, put it that way. But it will be before the trial.
Will they be in our town, do you know? So our little Leveret, will he remain in Beccles, or will he go perhaps to Ipswich?
Yeah. No, what we're working on is that if you are in one of the satellite locations, then your Leveret will stay in that satellite location. It doesn't make sense for us to put it in Ipswich when everybody in the local community wants to see it, and all those people that have contributed to it want to see it in the local area. So no, it will be staying in Beccles.
But hopefully it will be a gateway to all of those people going and seeing that one and then going and exploring, because they'll be like, oh my God, we've seen these amazing hairs. We want to see them all now. It does become a little bit Pokemon. Got to catch them all, haven't you, while they're out there before they hop to it.
Yeah. Excellent. Any other questions? Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Annie. I hope you all think that was really informative. As Annie said, if there's got any questions, she's always happy to ask. Please come through to myself, Claire, or Sophie if you have got any questions. We can certainly pass you on to Annie, or if there's anything that we can help with, then yeah, just get in contact. Hope everybody's going well with their fundraising. I know I've been seeing some fantastic initiatives already taking place. I think someone had a crazy hair day the other day. I don't know if they're on the call today. But there's been some really great ones. I know that obviously quite a lot going on around Christmas as well. So no, fantastic. And obviously can't wait to start seeing you as you move forward with decorating your leverets.
And have fun with it, because these are the projects that people do remember. I still go back to schools in and around Birmingham, which is where I was based when I first started working with Wild and Art, and these sculptures are sat in reception as like a really lovely kind of legacy of these projects. And I chat to young people who were like, oh my God, I love doing that project, because it was the first time we were able to do something that kind of properly was outside of school as much as it was inside. So yeah, have fun with it, explore it, and you know, creativity is one of the most important transferable skills. Not every young person is going to be an academic who are going to be brilliant at maths, at English, at science, but every young person has the ability to be creative, and creative thinking, creative strategy building, kind of being able to think outside the box. So for you young people thanks so much for you coming along to this session and finding out more about this project. But I promise you, creative skills are the future. It's our biggest growth economy, and it's such an important thing to be able to do, is to think and work creatively. So thank you so much, and have so much fun getting involved in this project.
Thank you all for your time today. We'll send round an email following this with the presentation, which will go on to the toolkit, and then for those people that haven't been able to attend, we'll send round a copy of the recording. So have a lovely evening. Speak to you all soon and hop to it.
Hop to it.
Oh, we was not on. No, you weren't on.